Hello everybody, I am Dr. Ahmad Torabi, PhD in law. I have been teaching different areas of law, including contract law, in universities for many years, for a long time. And in this video series, I'm going to teach you contract law online. There are some reasons that I have decided to do this. First is that many students sent me messages and requested me to have teaching online. And the second is about the role of technology in education. We know that technology has taken over almost every area of education. And the advent of technology has unlocked in the field of education a futuristic approach toward teaching online, learning online, and even writing online. Nowadays we see that digital learning, teaching online, learning online have become a big part of education, a regular part of education. Specifically, ever since COVID-19 pandemic. So I myself believe that this type of technology can be used for expanding the knowledge of law. And this is not only for the law students, this is not only used for the law students, but also it can be used for ordinary people who are interested in learning law. We know that people almost every day dealing with points of law. Law bind them in different aspects of their life. People always in their life are making contracts, are signing contracts for buying home, for buying homes, for buying cars, for buying appliances, for buying insurance policy, and so forth. So anyway, they are dealing with contracts, and I think we can't find anyone that is out of contract. Everyone in his or her life is engaged, is involved with some paperwork, with some contracts. So because of this reason, I have decided to have teaching online. So at the end of this video, if you think that it's useful and helpful, please like it, share it, and subscribe it. So once the new video comes out, you'll be notified. Contract is a common concept in everyone's life. It is consistently used in our social, economic, and political life. It is an instrument in the hands of human beings to regulate and manage the relationship with others. So it's true if we say that legal life is meaningless without contract. Now we're going to study the importance of contract law within two categories. The first, I'm going to study, in brief of course, the importance of contract law in English literature, and to show you how English literature cares about this matter, how it is important in the English literature, and then we're going to study this the importance of contract law among other branches of law. We can trace contract law in the English literature in many works of the English literature. And perhaps the best example of these works is the very brilliant novel of William Shakespeare called Merchant of Venice, written between 1596 to 1598. 500 years ago. And in this novel, we see that the main problem is about the contract between Shylock, who is a money lender, and Antonio, merchant of Venice. Antonio guarantees a loan for his friend Bassanio and undertakes, if he cannot repay the loan at a specified time, then Shylock would have the right to take and remove Antonio's flesh for £1. Antonio, for any reason, couldn't repay the loan that he had borrowed, couldn't repay it at due time. So Shylock went to the court and said that I want the law, I want my contract is enforced. So there were many arguments about this matter. And this shows that to what extent Shakespeare exactly wanted to show that enforceability of a contract is important and which promises can be enforceable. Argument which posed at that time in the court was this: if you want to take £1 of Antonio's flesh, you can do it, but no more, no less, without any drop of Antonio's blood. That was the reason Shylock couldn't take and couldn't remove from Antonio's flesh. But nowadays, we are talking about enforceability of contracts. Now we are talking about that promises in a contract must be reasonable, must be justifiable. So, but I want to say that 500 years ago, how Shakespeare could think about this matter and how Shakespeare could analyze performance of the contract, contents of the contract, and to see that how these promises can work, how these promises can be challenged. Now I'm going to look at the relation between employment law and contract law. The relation between employer and employee is formed through contracts. This contract may be written, may be oral, may be expressed, may be implied. But the framework of such contract is based on points of contract law, such as parties of the contract, capacity of the parties of the contract, consent of the parties of the contract, consideration, which means the payment that employer pays to the employee, conditions of the contract, terminations of the contract, liabilities, responsibilities of the contract, compensation of the contract. So all of these are based on contract law. And there may be, of course, arbitration clause, which nowadays we see that mandatory arbitration clause have increasingly found in employment contracts. And I want to draw your attention to this clause. It's very important. Who determines arbitrator? Employer or employee or cooperation together. I mean, between employer and employee, both have found some ways to determine arbitrator. This is important. I'm not totally against such clause, but I just want to draw your attention to such a clause in employment contracts. And there is another presumption in such employment contracts, which is called at will. At will means whenever employer wants, he or she can terminate the contract. Or on the contrary, whenever employee wants, he or she can cancel, can terminate the contract, the employment contract. This presumption there are some exceptions to this presumption in California law, which are public policy, retaliation or discrimination, fraud or misrepresentation, which of course must be studied in employment law. But anyway, what I'm going to say is this. The framework of employment contracts are based on points of contract law. So without studying contract law, I think we cannot form any employment contract. Now I'm going to talk about the relation between contract law and family law. Actually, many principles of contract law are applied in family law. Marriage is the center of family law. What is the nature of marriage? Some writers say that it is only a social relationship between two parties. But from law point of view, we consider it as a social relationship between two parties with some elements of contract law in it, with some law principles in it. According to a marriage contract, both parties have some responsibilities, have some duties, have some obligation to one another. And also, if there is a child after marrying, again, they have some responsibilities and some duties for the child. Whether this child is naturally born, whether it is adopted by both parties. And also, before getting married, the parties may make another agreement, which is called prenuptial agreement, or as we call it in brief, they call it prenup agreement. Prenup agreement means that an agreement that both parties declare which properties they have obtained before getting married. And they want to exclude such properties from division after getting married. Because we know that when both parties getting married, whatever property they obtain after getting married will be divided between them if the marriage is ended by, for example, divorce. Then the properties will be divided between them half and half. So by entering into this agreement, prenup agreement, they declare that they identify that each one of them has obtained such properties and exclude such properties from division. In the United States, we have an act which is called a Uniform Prenuptial Agreement Act. It is approved in 1983 and it is revised and updated in 2012. This act establishes some procedural for protect of marital agreement, and it wants to be sure that all courts in the United States honor this act and honor this marital agreement. So if you want to know more about this act, you can search it as Uniform Prenuptial Agreement Act. Another branch of law which is related to contract law is criminal law. Yes, criminal law. Even in criminal law we can find some aspects and some points of contract law in it. There is a relation between contract law and criminal law. How? We may examine whether there is a valid contract to justify the defendant's act was according to duties of that contract or not. We may face with a forged contract or at least some forged elements in that contract. In such a case, that contract will be null and void. Also, we may face a contract has been used as a tool for committing a crime of fraud. In such a case, the framework of a contract is correct. Contents of a contract are correct, but the contract has been used as a tool for committing a crime. Usually the crime of fraud. Also, we may interpret the act of a person to examine such an act is compatible with an element of contract or not. To illustrate this, let me give you an example, a law case from United Kingdom. There is a law in United Kingdom 1959 which is called Restriction of Offensive Weapon, according which selling or offering to sell or hiring are forbidden and punishable. Selling of offensive weapon, offering for selling of offensive weapon are forbidden. So there was a case, a flick knife was displaying in a shop window with a price tag next to it, and he was accused, the man who was accused, for committing this crime. Now we see that contract law can help this man to be acquitted, to be exonerated. How? In contract law, displaying something for sale, displaying something for sale is not called offering. It is invitation to treat. There is a distinction between invitation to treat and offering. Offer is something else. We will study it later, but only I want to mention that how contract law can help criminal law, can help a man who was accused of committing a crime. Yes, here displaying a flick knife even next to a price tag was not a crime, was not offer. It was only invitation to treat. So we see that. I just want to say that how contract law is related to criminal law, how contract law is the base of other branches of law. So up to now, we considered some branches of law and the role of contract law in them. I should add that in other branches of law, such as transportation law, insurance law, real estate law, and other branches of law, we can find and we can search the role of contract law in them as well. Many paperwork that you may sign and you may see, you can see the role of contract law and elements of contract law in them. But I'm gonna look at the role of contract law from another point of view as well. See, human beings, when human beings are born, contract law is born with them, which means contract law is born with us. You may ask how. The answer is this. See that when a child is born, the government has duties and is obliged to take care of a child if the parents of a child are unable to take care of it. So who has the duty? The government. And the government comes forward and has to provide for a child clothes, food, shelter, education, healthcare. Of course, I know that according to some laws, for example, in California, we have a law which is called Welfare and Institution 1937, upon which the court must appoint guardian for such a child to take care of it. Governments are responsible to take care of newborn children. Why? Because these duties are mentioned in the Constitution or in specific laws. I'm sure that in many countries you can find such duties for government in the laws. And when this child is growing and anyway they become younger and they become elder, anyway, again we see that the duties of government are growing as well, remain as well. Why? Because there is a contract between government and members of the society. We have a government, and there is a relationship between citizens and government. There is a contract between them. One side is government and one side is citizens. Citizens are paying taxes. These taxes are consideration exactly. So one side is obliged to provide for them good environment, better environment for them. Must provide environment to think freely, must provide environment to vote in the affairs of our country, and many things else. Must provide an environment for economic growth, yes, for social growth, for education, for health care. These are duties of a government, and we citizens expect to be respected by the government, expect to be honored by the government. I know that there is a challenge about the duties of government in every country. This is a challengeable issue for every government. But what I want to draw your attention to this point, that this is only a contract. This is only a contract between citizens and government. If you want to know more about this matter, I recommend you to study a very brilliant book of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, French writer, and which is called Social Contracts. And then you will find out how the law of contract, the role of contract law in our society, in our life. So this is going to be very important that we understand exactly the role of contract law in every moment of our life. Okay, in this lesson 1, I talked about the importance of contract law among other branches of law and also in our real life, and the role of government in expanding and developing contract law. And from the next session, I will start teaching elements of a contract, of a simple contract. So if you like this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe it so whenever a new video comes out, you will be notified. I'm trying to provide a new video within 1 week. So once the new video comes out, you'll be notified if you subscribe it, of course. I hope to get more comments from you to understand exactly what's going on regarding my videos, and everything that you think is good, let me know. So I try to use your comments in my teaching. Thank you. Until the next session.